All right, let's transition. Final thoughts of the night from the corner here on this live edition of the corner. Let's talk about Miguel Cabrera, the greatest right-handed Tigers hitter of this generation. You could make the case that he's arguably one of the best right-handed hitters of all time. Um, but you gotta know that when you talk about Miggy's all-time greatness, he is always going to be compared to someone who played in this same generation, being Albert Pujols. Now, in this series against Seattle, on Monday or on Tuesday and Wednesday night, I'm sorry, they were off on Monday. On Tuesday and Wednesday night, Miguel Cabrera got back-to-back starts. That was the first time that he had started in back-to-back games since August 1st and 2nd. He is obviously hurting. We know that. There were rumors of him potentially hanging up the cleats after this season, but then he shot them down because the paycheck is way too large for next year for him to not collect it. Okay. But what is the role that Miggy's going to have on this team in 2023? I don't want him to just kind of fade away into the sunset. You want to see some type of resurgence like Albert Pujols has had after the All-Star break. And um we're going to look into these two and their numbers, and I think that there's a specific reason why they are the way that they are. And here's the deal. Okay, Miggy on the season so far, I'm going to give you broad numbers and then we're going to get into breaking it down pre All-Star break, post All-Star break. Miggy this season so far has a 53% ground ball rate, which is the second highest of his career. His K rate, his strikeout rate is the highest that it's been since his rookie season. And he has the lowest hard hit rate of his entire career. But there's a reason, I think, for that, and the reason that I think that is obviously numero uno is the knee injury, right? That I think it was Jason Beck at the All-Star break time when Miggy and Albert Pujols were added to as, what do they call them? The legendary picks or the legend selection, that's what they were. He saw Pujols going in the home run derby, and he asked Miggy, Jason Beck did, "Are you gonna, you want to do this to have your son see you participate in it?" And Miggy just pointed to his knee. He said, "I can't." So there's obviously that limitation. But when we're talking about a guy at the age of Miguel Cabrera, look at these numbers and tell me if you see a difference. Prior to the All-Star break, Miguel Cabrera had 309 plate appearances. Albert Pujols had 173. Now, Miggy was okay. He had 82 hits, 8 doubles, 3 home runs, 34 RBIs. We know that in that time, he also collected his 3,000th hit. He only had a 5% walk rate when he struck out 24% of the time, but he had a 92 weighted runs created. Now, in about half of those plate appearances, Pujols had 6 doubles, 6 home runs, 20 RBIs, walked 9% of the time, struck out 17% of the time, and had a 92 weighted runs created, the same exact impact on the game that Miguel Cabrera had in about half of the at-bats. Little more than half. But since the All-Star break is the big difference. Miguel Cabrera has had 81 plate appearances. Albert Pujols has had 87 plate appearances. About the same number. Agreed. I'm no mathematician, but 81 is pretty close to 87. Cabrera, 10 hits. Pujols, 29 hits. More than double. 2 doubles for Miggy. 5 doubles for Pujols. 1 home run for Miggy. 9 home runs for Albert Pujols. 34 weighted runs created for Miguel Cabrera since the All-Star break. That is 66% below Major League average. While Pujols, on the other hand, has 233 weighted runs created, 133% above Major League average. The problem, and I think the issue of why we most likely will not see we won't see a resurgence this season. Like, just I agree with what Paul said, kind of like shelve him for the rest of 2022. But if there's any potential for a resurgence at the end of his career next season, then his use at the beginning of the season has to be Pujols-esque. When you are just about doubling the plate appearances of somebody who's even just a little bit older than you, but is producing at the same clip that you are in less at bats, there's an issue. There's a problem. So we know for sure that Miguel is going to be well, let me backtrack. It's most likely that Miguel Cabrera is playing for the Detroit Tigers in 2023. It would be very, very what's the word? It would be very shocking if he is not suiting up for the Tigers. But just because he puts on a uniform and yes has a very high dollar amount doesn't mean that he necessarily needs to be in the lineup all the time for the Detroit Tigers. If there's to be any type of riding off into the sunset, as Albert Pujols appears to be, right? He's 6 home runs away from 700. With 30 games to play, I'm hoping that he gets there. I just want to see Pujols end his career at even if it's 700 on the number. I want to see him there. But if Miggy's going to have any type of resurgence next season and kind of leave on that high note in the last half of the season, then it's going to require a Pujols like workload. It's going to require multiple days off and limited at bats, especially prior to the All-Star break. And so I'm going to end my thoughts there, but I want to dive into the comments because I know there were a lot coming into on that Pujols discussion. Here's what they say about Cody says, there's not much we can really do about him. We can't trade him or release him, so let him go out in his terms. It's only one more year. Cody, yeah, you're absolutely right, right? Like this is not a Miguel Cabrera problem. This is a Detroit Tigers organizational problem, which seems to be the theme of the show, right? They signed him to the contract. It's not his responsibility to walk away from that money. If he wants to play, he will have a uniform, he will have a roster spot. And if he chooses to play, there better not be any tough decisions of DFAing or anything else. If they do that, there should be some type of uproar from the fans because this man has earned the right to go out, as Cody said, and I think everybody would echo, on his own terms. There's no doubt about that. But the reality is, as Paul would say, it's an unpopular opinion, but he's been a waste of a roster spot. You could argue that. There's no doubt about that. So I want to be very clear that while he might be paid, doesn't mean that he needs to play. Now, is there a way they could get creative and make him a very overpriced coach? Yeah, potentially, right? But that's going to be very, very unlikely, would be the case. The butts and seats that Cody's talking about here, like his name it did put butts and seats. People will show up for his final games, but there's no milestones anymore. Nobody's watching or wanting to be there for him to get his, 3079th hit. They wanted to be there for the 3000th. They wanted to be there for the 500th. He's not getting the 600 home runs. And so there's no milestone moments for him other than that final game at Comerica Park. So the name draw is not there anymore until people know it's the final game. Listen, like when we knew Tiger Stadium, right? The corner right here, the corner was closing. It was 1999. I was 12 years old in September of that year. I knew I had to get to one of those final games because it was a place that had housed so many memories for me in those first 12 years. Going to the corner every year with my grandma for her birthday, like those kind of things were important. The same type of nostalgia is going to be attached to Miggy and his final days in Comerica Park. The question is going to be whether it's going to be like, oh man, we're so glad that you're here and we're glad that you made it to the finish line, or we're celebrating going, man, you went out on a high note like Albert Pujols is doing in the Cardinals uniform, right? Like the Pujols is ending the career the way that you want to end the career. If the Tigers want any type of send off for Miguel Cabrera that way, then they're going to have to make sure that he has a Pujols like workload in 2023.